Good afternoon. My name is Susan Doyle and I will be your facilitator today on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland. I would like to welcome you to Lean Construction Ireland's 39th webinar, the topic of which is That's the Way We Do It, Overcoming Traditional Project Management Limitations. If you have a question, please type it in the question box and we will ask Felipe in the second half of the webinar. If there are any questions that we don't get answered during the webinar, we will follow up by email afterwards. The speaker for today is Felipe Engineer-Manriquez, National Director of Lean Construction with McCarthy Building Companies, Inc. Felipe is an international Lean speaker, a serial entrepreneur, and is committed Lean practitioner, sharing decades of construction industry experience as the host of the EBFC Show podcast. He is an active contributing member of the Lean Construction Institute US and is an approved instructor facilitator. Felipe was honoured with the Lean Construction Institute Chairman's Award during the 21st Annual LCI Congress for contributions to the Institute and the design and construction industry as a whole. He has a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, a Master of Business Administration, and leads the Lean Construction Programme for McCarthy Building Companies, Inc. I will now hand you over to Felipe to start his presentation.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome everybody. Let's get started. This contact information will be shared with you later so that if we, heaven forbid, run out of time to answer all of your questions, I highly encourage each of you to connect with me on social media so we can continue the conversation and get all of your questions answered. With that, let's begin. Put a little gasoline in my mouse and make sure that off we go. So thank you so much for that lovely introduction. This is today's topic. Thank you again, Lean Construction Ireland. Greatly appreciate you inviting to share some of my knowledge and experience with teams that I've worked with. Let's start with the problem. The problem is always a good place to start. And this is the problem that we had faced some time ago. And I'll give you some context here in just a second. But we're a large organization and we needed to bring our procedures into standard practices across projects from the East Coast of the United States, say the Atlantic Ocean, all the way across through the center of the country to the West Coast of the Pacific Ocean. And we had many different contract types in various stages of both design and construction. How do we do it? Well, the way we did it is we started with one section in 2017. And I'm going to call that 2017 group Team 2017. At the time, we didn't know that we were Team 2017. That's just what I'm calling them now. We actually did not have a team name. In hindsight, we should have had a team name. How do they measure up against Team 2019? Just a year and a half later, another team gets together and updates the remaining part of the procedures. And we're going to take a look at how they did. And with our lovely facilitators' assistance, I want to ask all of you to go ahead and get your fingers playing with your keyboards, get into the chat and tell me how often, most often, just from your memory, and it's completely anonymous. I just want to know, do your teams deliver A, early, just type the letter A and hit enter, B, on time, or C, late, most often? And then the hidden voice will become unhidden and tell me what is the answer. Just looking for what are people putting in the most.
Okay, Felipe, if you want to just keep going, then we can come back to that in a couple of minutes, yeah?
Yeah, you just interrupt me when you get the answer. All right, a little background on McCarthy. We're a national general contractor. We operate, like I said, from coast to coast here in the United States. It is a lovely 7 o'clock in the morning in California right now. So kudos to you, whatever time it is. We have more than 2,000 full-time employees now and more than 20 offices now. But I'll go with at least 7 at any given time, because some of it's project specific. The offices don't change that much, but there are many. We've been around in the United States operating for over 150 years, and we've been employee owned since 2002, which makes it for an interesting place to work, a great place to work, because we own the place. It's nice. So that's our logo. A little bit about us. I work as a person serving the entire organization, from the corporate groups all the way through the project teams executing. So that includes sales of generating working with new clients, existing clients, all the way through designing, construction, shoveling the ground, and then maintaining relationships afterwards. The entire thing. So it's a cool job to have. Recommend you get more involved in your organization as well. So now, how do we standardize without just being average? That's a great question. I'm gonna put a little disclaimer here. Any voices that I do, any sound effects that I use are just for my entertainment purposes. Okay. So I'm gonna do my best Dilbert boss voice right now. We will be adopting the best practices in our industry, just like everyone else. Best practices. And then Dilbert comes back like he always does. If everyone is doing it, best practices is the same as mediocre. Stop making mediocrity sound bad. Sorry. Yeah, let's not be a Dilbert cartoon. I'm not saying that we are, but some people in our industry look at standards as mediocrity. Other people that have just a little bit of lean training or have had some experiences with continuous improvement know that standards are good to have because it sets the baseline from where to improve. A standard doesn't last forever. Things change, the markets change, the way your employees engage in their work changes. Standards should continuously adapt, but you need to start there first. Otherwise, you're just changing on top of change, which is chaos. And there is a subtle difference there. I could talk about that more, but I won't for now, unless you ask me about it in the Q&A. So Team 2017, we wanted to start with a small experiment. We're going to take off a little piece. And in the beginning, we thought we're just going to do the job startup section. So for our construction company, the policies and procedures actually used to be in a binder. When I started the company over 12 years ago, and I've been in the industry for 20 years, so it was like half my midpoint in my career. It was the largest procedures section I'd ever been exposed to. The binder was about yay thick, and it covered everything. Job startup was just the part from you have a project, you're mobilizing, you're setting up your logistics inside of the site. You're also setting up how many people on your staff. So those types of things when you start a new project in the construction phase. And we decided to use traditional project management in order to get this done, to get this section updated. So let me just show you what those steps are. Because when I say traditional project management, I don't know what you think, so I'm just going to tell you what I think, what it was in this case. So we had a 15-person team from across the country, and we also included some regional support people as well. We got together in person. We made a plan. We were going to update this binder style procedure, which, I mean, this is just a stock photo. So don't think that that's our procedures, even though that it could be. I mean, it totally could be, but it's not. We're going to update our binder style procedure and policies by looking at what we have and then just making edits and then changing it with some review process. The way we're going to execute that was the third step. We're going to update one section, and then we're going to break that section into pieces because we have 15 people, make small teams, and let the team subdivide and finish the remaining parts. And then we're going to monitor and control using a traditional schedule, a Gantt chart schedule. In this case, we were using, so just in case you're wondering, what did they use? Oracle P6 schedule with the Gantt chart, so we can monitor what was critical to do and see how we're doing over time, right? Traditional project management methodologies. We are also going to do a post-mortem at the end and close out, and our closeout plan was just to roll out this section across the entire organization of nearly, at that time, just shy of 2,000 employees and project tradespeople. That was the plan. So here's the challenge. So we've got, this is a real picture of people working on the team. The team was a mix of corporate and operations partners. They were all handpicked because of their subject matter expertise in this section. So they had some skin in the game, or they had some reason operationally or by their expertise role in the company that they had a say in what was going to be in this section. So the project required balancing daily work demands with the extra effort of this task force. So this is a picture of one break. So we're taking a break. We're working for multiple days together. And at the breaks, I started noticing that every time we took a short break, people were out in the hallway answering phone calls that they were letting go to voicemail during the time. And then people were answering emails, and just working a lot to try to catch up and keep up with the flow of work coming in now. And I realized at that time, this is going to be a challenge because people are having to balance their day job responsibilities with this additional work of doing this project that only is done occasionally throughout the time. Like at this time, I'd been McCarthy for a little more than, wow, math's hard to do. Like I think around a decade, and the procedures had only been updated incrementally small over that time. And this was a big change of a section, had not been done to this level. So this was something new for a lot of folks. And in total, the job startup only represented 0.5% of the total manual. So here's another picture, Team 2017. One of the first things we need to do is understand what did we have. So we did a process map of the current state. So you can see people up here, the subject matter experts generating the tags, and then people with an opinion, different functional groups in the back, just seeing what's happening. And you can see who's really there, and people saying, is that really what happens? Is that the right order? And then getting the order to match and making the improvements with my favorite technology, human communication, also known as language. Yes, language is a technology. And we use the Post-it notes to help visualize our thinking and have the right conversations. That's process mapping in live, right? So this team took about 12 months from start to finish, and that we do what's called waterfall scheduling. Traditional project management, you've probably heard this before, is waterfall approach because all of our steps look like a waterfall when you put them into your scheduling software and your Gantt chart. We had the kickoff in person. We finalized the team assignments, the smaller group teams. We had to clean the drafts up after the process mapping. We were going to upload to an internal company website. There would be a review with the vice presidents. A draft rollout plan would be created after we had the deliverable. We would do a debrief so people knew how to help spread the word, and then they'd go live to the entire company. That's what the plan looks like. That's what every Gantt chart, every waterfall plan always looks so perfect when it's scheduled. And I always ask people, at what point does a schedule become inaccurate? And I get all kinds of crazy answers. And the answer is as soon as you hit save, not even when you hit print, because it doesn't take into account the changing conditions with the people. So here's what really happens. Waterfall schedule, project activities start and finish sequentially, but they depend on the prior step. And the tasks are small enough and specialized, they don't include rework typically as planned. So here we had a step at this cleanup drafts and uploading to the internet. There were actually corrections here because of the technology. The technology forced additional corrections beyond just getting the right words and examples in the draft that was unforeseen. So that added more time. And then again, with the review from the vice presidents of operations to making the draft for rollout, and even the rollout plan itself had revisions and corrections. And then later, as we debriefed and we learned over the course of this 12-month period, there were even more corrections before going live. And then once it was live, there were more corrections again because of the system that we were uploading to was having updates itself over time. By the time we started here at the team kickoff to the time that we went live, the system we were uploading to was changing. So that added some more change nuance. So remember that 12 months, keep that in your mind. Let's get that burned in there. So it's approximately 12 months from start to finish for one section. Just burn that in. All right, ready? Yes. Do we have our most often, how are we completing our projects now?
We do, yeah. Number or letter C, last option.
Last option. Wow. Okay. Good to know. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. Now you know that you can ask questions in the chat at any time. So exercise that right. All right. So now, new problem. We're going to bring the remaining procedures into standard practices across our portfolio again, but this time we're going to include our design and construction customers. So a little bit different. We're learning from our mistakes, but I found another Dilbert cartoon to to symbolize this. This is a different boss here at Dilbert. Here's the typical boss, but this is another boss, because what corporate company is complete without at least two bosses? Our goal is to ship 1 million units this quarter. Now, for our construction partners, 1 million units this quarter we can substitute with putting X number of projects in place. For our architect partners, designing X number of buildings or civil work, or for our engineering partners, completing X number of systems in this unit of time. Okay, so use the analogy that makes sense for you. And then Dilbert comes back with, do we have any goals that involve making customers happy? I'm talking about our goals, not theirs. And the other boss is like, totally different. Yeah, a lot of times when we do things, we don't think about the customer. Who is the customer? So a little nuance difference. The customer is anyone receiving your work and ultimately the end user of the thing that we're creating or the service we're providing. So when I say customer, that's what I'm talking about. People receiving your work or the end user or the ultimate building owner, right? It could be different. It does change depending on where you are. So here, Team 2019, as promised, let's see how they measure up. So Team 2019 started by coming together. We gathered together just like last time, but this time we talked about what did we learn from Team 2017. There were a couple of people on both teams, including myself. We have the leaders at the front explaining what did we learn from the last time. This time, the challenge is to do 300 sections, actually more than 300. It's an odd number. I can't remember exactly how much more, but if you round, it's definitely more than 300, but it's less than 350. So somewhere between 300 and 350, I just can't remember the exact number. Let's just say 300. We have 64 people total this time. They're not all pictured because I couldn't get far back enough when I'd taken the picture. We had a 7-person core team leadership group made up of vice presidents. We had 57 people that were going to do the work of updating the manual. 57 people. So before Team 2017, we only had 12 for one section. Now we have an army. We have 64 people in total. So what did we do? Well, one of the first things that they did is they said, the last time it took too long, and we don't want to take that long, so we want to go faster. So one of the vice presidents tapped my shoulder at the beginning. I was sitting, minding my own business, drinking coffee, not unlike I'm doing now. And they said, you know some stuff about lean and agile. Why don't you just stand up and take the team, lead the team forward? And I said, well, I'm honored and surprised to be being voluntold so early in the morning. Voluntold, that's a new word. That means that you're volunteered, but you're told in a way that makes you feel like you're volunteering. So I decided to use Scrum. And Scrum is a framework, right? Here's the definition of what is Scrum, and we'll go to this picture in a second. So I thought about what the work was, and I said, the only thing that I think we can do is to use Scrum. So I had to convince the team, I had to sell the team on using Scrum. And Scrum is this. It's a framework in which people can address complex, adaptive problems while productively and creatively delivering products of the highest possible value. And this is what the framework looks like when you draw it out. When you draw out the whole thing, there's backlog of all the things we need to do. There's the short term, what we're going to do when you set a plan. You do some work with your team. You have a product owner who's the responsible person to deliver value for the customer or create revenue for your organization or project. And you have the Scrum Master who serves the team. The role of the Scrum Master is to serve the team. There are a couple of events or meetings, such as the sprint review, the sprint retrospective, the daily Scrum or the daily huddle, the daily stand-up, all things nearly synonymous. We set a goal and we decide to work for a set amount of time, like a week, 2 weeks, no more than a month. And then you repeat. So if we say we're going to sprint every week, that means that every week we go through looking at all these elements that you see diagrammed here. So most often in construction, teams sprint every 5 days. In other industries, sprints can vary, but once you pick a duration, stick with it. If you want to learn more about Scrum, I recommend you take out your smartphone, hit that QR code, And I will be sharing the links, and you will be getting access to the slideshow in the future. So fear not if you can't get your phone out fast enough to snap that QR code to learn more about the Scrum framework. And the link is actually down here as well, but that's a lot to type out. So that's why we do this QR code, for your ease and benefit. So right away, I decided to use this. I've been using Scrum in my work for a number of years at that point. I was certified Scrum Master with Dr. Jeff Sutherland, who's one of the co-creators of the framework. And the framework is a pull system, P-U-L-L, pull, just like Last Planner system with production controls. Very similar, but different. Coincidentally, became public and known in the 90s. The 90s were an interesting time in the world. We have two really cool frameworks coming forward, two pull systems invented in two different industries for the very same reason. The way that things were going, Gantt chart style, was not effective anymore. So this is what we did. And in Scrum, one of the first things you do is you set a goal. So I didn't stop and tell the team, hey team, we're going to use Scrum, but I did stop and stand up in front of the team and make my case for why I would be serving them and helping them get across the finish line. And I said, as the person in charge of serving you, well, I have one question I have all of you answer. On January 22nd, it's day one of our meeting. I asked this question: what do you want to achieve? Because I'm looking for the goal. I don't know what all 57 people are thinking. So I went to the front of the room, and using this technology of language and writing things down to make things visual, every single person had to answer what they wanted. And I wrote down every single answer. Now, I did ask everybody, just tell me one thing you want to achieve by being on this team. But some people cheated and gave me two things. And I said, okay, I'll allow it and we'll put it on. And then we word clouded it during one of the breaks, because that was a lot of writing and I needed to rest my little hand after writing what 57 people said. when I put it into this word cloud, this is what came forward. And yes, that does look like the United States, because we had people from all over the country, and I didn't want anyone to be left out. This is our team goal. As a Scrum practitioner, I know we're going to have to come back to this team goal often. Like every time we get together, we're going to have to come back and look at this. It's going to help guide our decision-making process and keep us aligned. And the number one thing that people wanted, the most often occurring element, was alignment, just coincidentally. You can't make this stuff up, people. It's amazing. We wanted alignment from this process. So just like Team 2017, on day 2, we started a process map. You can see it started really slow, almost nothing. This is an entirely new group of people. Some people have never done a process map before, so we had to show people how to process map. Yes, we did. And we actually did the same thing for Team 2017. And this time, at the breaks, people kept working on the policies and procedures. It looked different. Now, these people are just as busy as the people from before, but I think starting with the goal created a higher level of engagement beyond the other team. We learned from the other team and we shared stories. We were open and honest about what worked and how long it took. And we made the case for why dedicating yourself to just doing one thing at a time would speed this process up and deliver more value for all your partners in the organization and ultimately our customers. So then we did something different. We're adapting from what we learned before. We went to socialize the current state. As they created their process maps, they had to come up and present. This is one of the project directors presenting why this process map should be this way, why the steps for the particular section that he's presenting on needs to be this way. And anyone could ask questions and challenge what it should be. We had superintendents, project managers, directors, administrative assistants, support people. We had chief schedulers from across the company, pre-construction people, business development people, lawyers. We even had lawyers in this meeting. So anybody could challenge, and surprisingly, the lawyers did not challenge as much as I thought they would. I thought we'd get some more lawyer challenging, but we didn't. And then they're socializing and they're working in different sections throughout one room. And we've got boards in here all over, so all the people can get space to work. So we're doing, I've hinted at what we're doing. We're doing PDCA, plan, do, check, adjust. It was this framework made famous by William Edwards Deming, which he had changed, updated from the work that Schuhart did. Plan, do, study, adjust. Plan, do, check, adjust. Depending on what you read, you might see a different letter here for the center, PDCA, PDSA. It's okay. It just means it's an application of the scientific method applied for improvement. Make a plan, do a little experiment, check your hypothesis, look at your results. Did you get what you expected? If you did or didn't, make an adjustment and then repeat as much as needed. So we're doing this PDCA based on what we learned in Team 2017. Team 2019 has the benefit of all of the learning from the previous team. 7 teams formed organically. We didn't create 7 teams. They naturally emerged because of how we went forward with this. There were coincidentally 7 manual sections. I wonder if there's a theme here. Each manual section had a leader, 7 teams. Yeah, it's definitely by design here. And then we had 7 team leaders. Each section needed to have a leader. Or if you're thinking of the Scrum framework, I'm looking for a product owner. So I found my product owners. I had 7. That's what we did here. That's the magic. And by this point, the team still had not even heard the word Scrum. Never said it, but we're operating in the framework. Okay, so the leadership said before, we can't take as long as Team 2017. So I had to do PDCA again. I asked the vice presidents, when would you like this delivered by? They said, we want this draft. We had a meeting and we decided that there's a vice president meeting that's going to happen in July. So we want to see the first draft before July 1st, 2020, because we have a meeting later that month and we want to present to the rest of our vice presidents across the company that this is the draft, this is what's coming. So that's what they said. And I said, wow, that's really aggressive. I said, last year, one section took 13 months. And they said, well, you can use your lean methods. You should be able to get it done. I was like, guys, I love the confidence and the challenge. I did not feel very confident at that time because I hadn't seen the team work yet. So it's hard to tell, but there it is. So we made that visual. I put it up in front of the room so everyone could see, and we explained what did this mean. And we talked about how are we going to meet. So we decided as a group that people could commit to meeting in person, virtually, every other time. So alternating every 2 weeks, we got together, sometimes in person, sometimes online. It just alternated. It was just random. I mean, not totally random. We planned it. We had to send calendar invites to make sure people showed up. I told the people, most of the people in the room know me. I've been at McCarthy at this point for over 10 years. So a lot of the people knew who I was. And I said, I'm going to send you all a calendar invite. I'm going to ask the leaders to get with your teams outside of this meeting. This meeting is just for the leaders to report how their teams are working. So the rest of you can meet with your teams as often as you need to get your work done. I'm going to ask you just 3 questions every time. The first question is, what did your team accomplish over the last 2 weeks? We're checking in every 2 weeks. Our sprint cycle is every 2 weeks. See what I did there? Using the Scrum framework. And the second question is, what are we working on for the next 2 weeks? So now we're looking forward. So we're looking in the past, looking to the future, what's coming up. And the reason for that is for question 3. What is blocking our team? What challenges are we facing? So then I use this website called Trello, Trello, Trello.com. It's free, it's secure. There are many alternatives to Trello. There are many different things you could use, but I use Trello. That's what I've been using for a long time. And I invited the teams to come into this site, and I said, I will drive this as the Scrum Master for the team. I will record what you say. I'm only going to write down what you say, and we'll use this so we can make our work visual and see how we're doing. So every column that you see here represents a check-in meeting, and we had the 17s checking in, and we have the meetings. There's February 11th, February 25th, March 11th, and so on all the way to the end. And then we had an escalation list. So when people answered that third question and they had a blocker, we would write down what is blocking them and it would get assigned to somebody. And the little picture icons are me. So some of the things that I can handle with technology and resolve the conflict, and some of the things the vice presidents had to resolve, some of the escalations, like some of the changes, such as getting more people involved, increasing the team size, or somebody's going on vacation, we need to substitute somebody in so we can keep working through updating these sections. So what you can see though is, ta-da! By May 1st, all drafts were completed for Vice President of Operations approval. We're like, but Felipe, the deadline was July. I know. We finished even faster. Oh, one thing to come back to, the color coding here on the meetings, we also asked the leaders to just tell us, just based on your experience, leader, and the leaders all had names. I didn't actually call them leader. I called them by their first names. So based on your experience with your team over the last 2 weeks, would you say your team is on target green, a recovery plan is needed, or red, we need to make changes now? And if you had to put a percentage to it to help with the numbers, there's some percentages there. 70% to 100% of your tasks being completed as planned. We said continue, you're on target. And you can see, like in the beginning, it's early on, everyone's super excited. It's all green except for one team. And I would say this team was like super honest. I appreciated that team's honesty. And as we went forward in time, you see the more teams turning red. We had more escalations as we got closer and closer. And by this point, we already had the draft framework in, so the people are in the system already. We're not doing a giant batch of updates on separate people's computers. No, we're updating live in the final system, in the sandbox where it's going to live in its permanent home. So we learned that lesson from before, from that waterfall schedule. We wanted to minimize the rework and get people just updating live in the final system. So that's a little thing there. And if I blow that up, you can see all the different teams. We had the core team, and these report outs were only 15 minutes long. And if we had escalations, we would do escalations at the end, and then we'd capture them and assign who's going to do what. Okay, so 2 months faster than the meeting target. So the meeting target was July 1st. 2 months faster is a 33% reduction in time. But if you think about that as compared to the other group, which you naturally should be thinking, how much better is that than Team 2017? I'm glad you're thinking that way. It means I'm actually doing this right. So we had our goal, and our goal was all about collaboration. We started with asking people what they wanted to achieve doing this work. That was a powerful thing to do to get alignment, and we did actually use our goal during those check-ins. When we had conflicts or things to check, we went back to our core purpose of what we're trying to achieve, and this helped everyone remember, yes, I did say that. Yes, I want to do this. And it helped answer questions and resolve conflicts. You can see that this team 2019, delivered in 5 months. That's 3 times faster than Team 2017. You're like, but Felipe, there's more people. I know there are more people, but it's over 300 sections, nearly equally sized to the one section that Team 2017 did. It's incredibly faster. Respect for people was the core of what we did when we checked in. We were always hard on the process and easy on the people. When our leaders came forward and said, I'm having this problem, we listened. We didn't say bad project manager or bad director. Never said that. We said, okay, something's wrong in the process. What can we tweak or adapt? And we serve the team so they can deliver. That's totally different. We had integrated the pre-construction manual and the operations manual. Prior to this, they were 2 separate things. They integrated. That's a bonus because of what we're doing. And another bonus that all of our people today are taking advantage of right now, today at McCarthy. If you are using a procedure and you have a good example of how you used it, you can hit this big red upload button in our system, and you can upload your example so that you can show your partners more collaboration. You can collaborate further with people. And that has caused people from across the company operating in more than 15 offices to email each other, pick up the phone, get in contact with people. Hey, Tom, I see that you just did this like a month ago. I found your example on the procedures manual. Can you show me a little more about this? Oh, Richard, no problem. Susan, yes. Let's get together, we'll form a call. And I've heard stories of people cross-collaborating across the entire organization is now becoming normal. That was a really nice bonus. So this is a living, breathing procedure manual. We didn't have that before in Team 2017, and we did not have that until we had Team 2019. The rollout this time was, this is an actual slide from a rollout that some of our leaders are using when they went out to teams during 2019 and 2020, and they're regularly asking their people, have you looked at the procedures manual? And they've got these slides to help socialize this. So we learned that socializing was really cool. And we said, now we can collaborate and improve usage. And we just ask some questions. Here's a picture from one of the last meetings in person from Team 2019. Remember, this team used Scrum. They got more than 2 times the work done in half the time, which is pretty cool. Look at how relaxed everybody looks. We are 2 months away from going live, and look at just how relaxed, and nobody is working. They're talking to each other during one of the breaks. The computers are open because we're looking at stuff in the system. Remember, this procedure is no longer a binder. It's all online in an internal website. And they're sharing lessons learned with each other of how this experience shaped their work. And we've got someone here from a corporate group. This is my buddy Charles with his cup of coffee. Cheers, Charles. You made this experience a pleasure. And people are sharing what they did. And here's an example of how we ran the meeting in person. We used a very lightweight Scrum framework. We had all the things we were going to do, our agenda for the 2-day meeting with Post-it notes, what we're doing, one thing at a time, and then things that we'd gotten done so everyone could visually see what we're doing. This exactly matched how we worked as a team for 5 months. That might have been the first time I said Scrum. So let me be the first person to ask a question if you haven't already done so. How can you apply this tomorrow? Listen to what Elmo says. Elmo says, start with a small experiment. Hit that QR code, get in touch with me, keep talking to me. I am a respect for people enthusiast, certified Scrum Master, a product owner, and a Scrum at Scale practitioner. This was one of my first goes with scaling Scrum with 7 teams, and I had a fantastic experience. So that's what I would do. I would say the answer to how can you use this is start small with an experiment. I want to encourage all of you to use your fingers and keyboards again and ask questions. I'm here to answer your questions now. I'll leave this up for a second and take the first question while some of you snap that QR code up.
Thanks, Felipe. Thanks again for a very insightful and detailed presentation. We do have several questions in already. So first up, how did leadership play a role in each team, and were there noticeable differences?
Leadership, so every single team had one person responsible for their team, and it wasn't done by title. So as the teams were working and they kind of we allowed people to self-organize. So for example, we had I'll take the 2 big teams. The 2 biggest teams were the construction operations team and the pre-construction team, or what traditionally is known as estimating. So those 2 teams had the largest number of people, and we allowed people to go where you were interested because we wanted people that were interested to work on their sections. It made for more engagement, and we learned that from Team 2017. So then once those teams had formed organically, we asked, as they were presenting their process maps, who would like to lead this team? Who would like to be responsible? And in the construction team, a project director raised his hand, Steve, my buddy Steve, and Steve said, I'll be the leader for this team. And then from there, we went to the next team, and the leaders either were nominated by their teams or they raised their hand and asked for it. And once the leaders were set, they were set. It never changed. And the way that they engaged, because they're human beings and they come with all kinds of variation, just like I do, they were able to answer following the same process. They had different issues with their teams. Some teams were large, like the construction team had more than 12 people, and the business development team only had 3 people. So the challenges that they faced were different. But we would raise those issues up to the vice president group, the 7 leaders. And the 7 leaders, with their combined experience in the company, I think was like over 200 years of experience of construction. They've just been at it for a long time. They were actually able to solve and help guide the people through any problems. Like I said before, switching out a team member, if somebody wasn't participating, or adding more people to a team that wasn't originally at the kickoff. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that's perfect. We have another question in here from one of the attendees. Do you see a difference in meeting output from the face-to-face meeting versus the online meeting?
I do, and it depends on how you kick it off. So I've launched Scrum teams during the pandemic completely virtual with a very high level, but it takes a lot more work on my part because I can't do my magic in person like I do. Like those of you who've known that who've met me in Ireland, you know that what you see on the screen is really close to exactly what you get. But there is some people do change their demeanor. It's hard to look at a little piece of glass and a lens and get engaging, right? But I've had a lot of practice and a lot of intentionality to be engaging with the camera. I'm imagining all of your beautiful faces looking back at me, not looking at this piece of glass, right? But some people in your organizations, it might even be you haven't made that transition yet, or that commitment to engage through the technology to contact with the people. So there's things that to do differently. Like there's some people that are really good in person, and then when you watch them online, you're like, wow, that's like a shadow of who they are. It's not the same. So, be patient with yourself. And if you got someone on your team that's a rock star presenter with people, and then you watch them in a webinar format, you could suggest, or if it's you, record yourself and watch it. Are you as engaging as you think you are? You're probably not. So think about that. And then don't give people unsolicited criticism. That's the worst kind. Don't, if nobody asked you for your opinion, don't make a recommendation to them unless they're open to it. Remember, respect for people is something you have to practice with yourself and with others. You could say, tell them things that I really liked about that, or you can ask them questions like, how do you think you did? How do you think the energy was? How does that compare with other teams? It can be done, but it takes more effort. To set this up, we knew as a team, because we had so many people, it just wasn't cost effective for us to come together. This was before COVID in 2019, this early 2019, January to May. We knew that we didn't want to spend the money to come together. For some of the check-ins, they could be quick. And like I said, those check-in meetings were less than 15 minutes of all the teams going through. And then we'd stay on for as much as 30 more minutes to start resolving some of the problems if need be. We didn't need to have people in person for that. But I would say for that first kickoff meeting, if you were going to do something in person, and that first kickoff meeting was a 2-day event, and I was going to do that virtually now, I wouldn't do 16 hours. I would probably do a 4-hour meeting one day, and I would change it. And I might have people do some things ahead of time, but thinking about what do I want? So start with the goal and work backwards from there as you set up how you're going to do the engagement. That's critical.
Okay, perfect. Another question in, how much time was required or allocated by the business to yourself each week as Scrum Master and for the contributors to the task?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as the Scrum Master, I had to be available to the team. I was balancing, at any given time, I work with about 30 different projects and about 100 collaborators a week. So even in 2019, I'm balancing that with traveling to 3 to 5 cities every week through that time period. I had to just be available. So if I was in a meeting, I would tell people, and I told the people in the beginning, I said, just like you, we all have day jobs. So if you send me an email, I promise you I will not respond within seconds. That's not going to happen. If you call me and I don't answer, I'm probably in a meeting with one of your partners. So don't, please leave a message and I'll call you back. And I committed to everyone that I would get back to everyone within a day or less. And most often I was able to get back to everyone within the same day for things that came escalated or questions. And we had 57 people. So if I couldn't answer something, I could put somebody in touch with somebody that could. So I knew all the people and I knew who was best to answer certain things. And I definitely used that to my advantage. So if you don't know your team, get to know your team. Where are their strengths and weaknesses? And then play to people's strengths. So I think all in all, for me, the meetings, the time in with the team, I was doing nothing else. I was just there. So for 2 days, I'm in walking around, getting involved in every process map, listening to every socialization, listening to how teams are going to capture, answering questions. I was not trying to do something else. I wasn't doing anything else. I totally blocked out the time. And then when we did the check-in days, the meetings were on the calendar for an hour, but they typically only lasted 30 minutes. So every 2 weeks on the alternating online, it was half an hour. And then during the week, it would be, typically 3 to 5 people contacting me, usually the leaders. They did a really good job of funneling the things up through their teams. So we had 7 teams, 7 highly functioning, performing teams. So even though we had, more than 60 people, I never had to deal with more than 10 to 12 people at a time. And that's part of the scaling of the process that made it so much more effective. If I had to answer 60 plus questions a day, that'd be really hard. But having people filter and then only bring forward things that they couldn't solve at their team level made it so much easier. And we only had to ever talk to like 10 to 12 people at a time in between the in-person meetings. And then the in-person meetings were all day events, and we had to travel in. So we travel in for a full day. So if you think about that in a month's time, it's probably about 5 days, roughly 3 to 5 days of my time as the Scrum Master for this team of 7, these 7 different teams, one single project. If you're a Scrum Master in an organization, the rule of thumb is that you should be best practice with one single team, especially if the team is new to Scrum. If you have an experienced Scrum team that knows how to operate in the Scrum framework, like they could tell you what's on the picture I showed in the beginning, and they could all tell you the definition of Scrum on their own without your help. At best, you can be on 2 teams. That's best case. If you're trying to do this for more than 2 teams, you're spreading yourself too thin. You're not going to serve your team well.
Okay, perfect. Can you give an example how you energized or rewarded the team to engage and take part?
Oh my God, I'm so glad you asked. And this is what, Susan, we were talking about this at the break. Like
Yeah.
what kind of things do I do to help energize the team? The first thing that I do is when I'm talking to people, I always make eye contact and I use their first name. That is one of the most amazing things that you can do with other human beings. My favorite word is actually Felipe. A lot of people think it's lean, but it's not. It's Felipe because then I know that you're actually talking to me and you want my attention. That's nice. So we use like cool little things like sound effects to be funny, right? You think of ways to do it. We cheer people, we would clap. If we saw something that was really good or something that saved our company money, we might do things like that. And I had a Bluetooth speaker, and here it is right here. Look at me. I had a little Bluetooth speaker just for that occasion when we needed to celebrate things. We also took the team out and we fed the team. When we came together and we paid, we corporate people paid for all these operations people and pre-construction people coming in. We said, we will feed you and we will buy you lunch and dinner and we'll give you all the coffee that you can drink, because that's just the kind of people we are in construction. We drink a lot of coffee. So encourage the people, use their first names, ask questions. I mean, be yourself. And if you've got somebody in your team, likely somebody on your team is very engaging, let them be the spokesperson for the team to engage with the team. Even if you're in charge, just because you're in charge doesn't mean you need to do all the talking. If you don't like talking in front of groups, find the person on your team that does, or if you want to get better at that, start practicing and do it. You be that person. But I would say turn your energy up and have fun with it. Like if you're doing something for work, make it fun. Don't make it work. Work is dreadful. Make it fun.
Exactly. Okay, another question for you. Do you incorporate Scrum with field teams? And if so, is the team organized and at what level of scheduling does Scrum fall into?
Oh, what a loaded question. That's like 3 questions loaded in one. Let me take that question apart.
Okay.
I do not mandate teams use Scrum. Everyone in my organization knows that I'm a Scrum Master, and if they want additional Scrum resources or they want to start up with Scrum, they contact me. And I think we have 6 Scrum Masters in our company today as of this month, which is awesome because for the long time I was the orphan Scrum Master. Now we have 6. So I have 5 other people that can help me set up teams. Teams use it themselves and they teach each other. So in each region, we have 5 major regions across the United States, kind of splitting the country up into sections. Each region I'm aware of has at least a dozen Scrum teams. These are teams in either operations, like project teams in construction, or teams in pre-construction using the Scrum framework, about 12-ish a dozen is about 12 per region, probably more. But that I'm aware of, it's about 12 per region. So you do the math, it's about 60 different Scrum teams operating independently on their projects. They've all started by saying, I'd like to try this. And we've done some like lunch and learn type of what is Scrum inside of our company to just socialize this framework as an alternative to traditional project management. Most teams will often take this and use the Scrum framework for just a part of what they do. For example, project management team will say, we're going to use the Scrum framework for all things change order. They'd be on a traditional design, bid, build project, and those projects have change orders. It's inevitable. Owners, if you're out there listening, if you did it traditional, change orders are coming. That's just the nature of the beast, and you know that. That's why you have contingency, and you have money on, you have your owner money on the side because you know changes are coming, and that's okay. So some teams say we're just going to use this for that because we want to make that process a pool system, and we want to just deliver those changes in the easy flow that the owner can handle, and that keeps our subcontractors, trade partners, cash positive. So a lot of teams do that. Some teams have used it for tenant improvement projects, smaller projects. I've heard of teams using it to organize like work that's unknown, like they're going to do some demolition and then building back. Because there's a lot of unknowns, they like to use the Scrum framework for that. A lot of our teams in construction, larger projects, will use Last Planner System of Production Control. And some of those teams will learn Scrum, use it for project management type of work like submittals, requests for information, procurement, and they'll use Last Planner System for the production work in the field with the trade partners. That's how it's most often used. And then some of our pre-construction teams are using it to manage all things that they do, like their complete workflow 100% is in the Scrum framework. And then some of our design managers and directors, design partners working with teams for jobs that are early are now organizing this, and they're taking the design teams through until they get to about production design, or sometimes people call detailed design. When there's a lot of options on the table, they use a very lightweight Scrum framework, and as they start to get more known what the design's going to be, they'll shift into Last Planner System. That's very normal and typical. Did I answer all parts of that question? Because I think there's another part in that.
Yeah, you did, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We'll go with just one more if we can. You've had a lot of questions.
We definitely can.
How did you create the collaborative team culture?
The first thing that I did was that I believed in my heart that people will collaborate. And I'm not trying to be a smartass. I'm not trying to be funny. I really mean that. The first thing that I did was I understood, looking back at my own experiences, have I been on teams where people collaborate at a high level? And the answer was yes. If you work in this industry long enough, you're bound to end up on at least one team that was amazing and awesome. And I thought back and I reflected on that, like, what made that so amazing? And it's that people worked together because they cared about each other and they were working to a larger purpose than themselves. So that's what I took in mind. So when I asked people how to make this collaboration, the most powerful question I asked them was not, do you want to use Scrum? I never asked that question. Never did that come out of my mouth. I asked people, what do you want to achieve by doing this project? And that question is what made it so different. And when people saw me, and even some of the leaders in the beginning said, are you really going to let everybody answer that? Like, they interrupted me after, we're an hour in to generate that cloud. And I said, this time is so important. I said, I can't read people's minds. I turned around and I told everybody, I can't read your mind. I do need to know before we move forward what you want to get out of this. And that alone right there created trust and commitment for me to them and them to me. I think that's a big difference. We often will come together as project teams and we just take for granted that the logo above our door or the logo on our check is enough for us to have to work together. And it's not. It's not enough. Ask people what they want, listen, and then don't be afraid to tell people what you want too. It's a great dialogue, and it creates a higher level of collaboration than if you just make assumptions and just go straight to work. So that's one of the best things that I learned when I learned the Scrum framework almost 10 years ago, was to start with a goal. What is the purpose of this team working together? And the better you can answer that question and set that, the faster that team can deliver with less effort. Every time.
Absolutely. Okay, we have one more question that they're still coming in for you. Have you yourself been inspired by teams you worked with? And if so, do you have an example?
Absolutely, yes. I absolutely have. This team, what they did for our company was they totally transformed how we operate, and they took us in from. I mean, I'm just gonna blush out on this team, and I've got another team in mind too. So maybe if I'll share too, we'll see how I do on my time. But to see so many people from across the United States, like if you don't know how big the United States is, Google it. It's pretty big. Each region has really different cultural nuances, and to have all those different people come together to do one thing and to do it at a really high level is inspiring. It's phenomenal. Like that's not something that I had experienced in my previous project work when you're working in local regions, typically in a city or in a part of the state. So this was something really cool to see so many people from across the organization to come together at all different levels. I mean, we had project administrators, project accountants, like I said, lawyers. We had people from information technology. We had operations people, project managers, directors, superintendents. We had so many different people from across the organization. And if I left out anybody on the team, apologies. Definitely, you're important too, Charles, talking about you. To come together and to work in one direction, you can feel the difference. There's like an energy on how the team, and when they started working together and delivering, I couldn't believe it, and neither could the vice president. So we were looking in the system, we could see like how much work was getting done. You could literally just like click in and then see. It was unbelievable how much they had done in so short amount of time and how good a quality it was. So that was very inspiring. There's another team, I got 3 minutes left. There's another team that I work with locally here in California that attended one of my lunch and learns. This is an estimating team, pre-construction team, and they started using the Scrum framework individually. And then at some point after a year, they said, "Why don't we use this as a team?" And my desk is like right next to them, so like I'm here, and then their section is just over here. I mean, I can literally stick my hand out and high five them. And they've been watching me work for a long time. They'd learned about Scrum from me, and then to see them like just on their own say, "We want to try this as a group," and then try it, and then start using it, and then stay with it. And 2 years later, um, one of them has become a Scrum Master, Brenda. Shout out to Brenda, awesome Scrum Master. She's presenting right now as we speak this morning to another team of new hires about why lean is important in our company. And I was like, Brenda's only been with our company for less than 5 years. I can't remember the exact time. And to have a new employee, step up, become a leader, and then engage with other newly hired employees about the power of having a lean culture in your organization and your team is just it makes me almost go speechless. Almost go speechless. It's it is amazing to see that type of transformation in such a short amount of time. And I have experiences like that with teams all the time. I have one of the coolest roles in the organization to be able to work with so many people, so many great people inside and outside the organization and around, like folks like yourselves. So yeah, I have more examples, but there's not enough time. If you want to hear more examples.
I just have one more question. It's
Yeah.
okay. We're okay for time. It's okay. What is the
Okay.
best frequency for Scrum meetings, daily or weekly?
Well, they call it the daily Scrum for a reason, because you have to do it daily. Now, I work with teams that are across the country. I did a research project with a team where we used the Scrum framework, and we were operating in 3 different countries. We had people in Europe, Canada, and the United States. So we're coming together. We decided to only do our Scrum meeting once a month when we met. And the type of work we were doing work offline, but we couldn't check in every day. We had all of us had full-time jobs on top of doing this research project. So we decided to do the check-in with ourselves when we checked in, and we worked for 1 or 2 days each month. And that's what we did. So if your team is not co-located and you only work when you're together, then just check in when you work together. So if it's 2 days in a row, do it on that Thursday, that Friday, or whatever days you do it. But if you're on a team working to deliver something, it's daily. It's daily, every day, without exception. At the same time, set a standard and then follow it. And if you don't like it at that time, the team can change it at any time. And the team is supposed to adapt the framework to suit their needs, but you need to at least start with the framework and then experiment and make the adaptations to suit you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, unfortunately, we have to finish up now. I'd like to thank Felipe again for his interesting presentation and your time today. A copy of this webinar will be sent out to everyone who attended. We will send out the information shortly via LinkedIn, Twitter, and newsletter for the next webinar, which is taking place on the 18th of November, the topic of which is driving collaboration, leveraging the EFQM model and ISO 44001, and it will be presented by Dennis Leonard from Graham. Thank you again from Felipe and myself on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland. You can follow Lean Construction Ireland on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and through the website leanconstructionireland.ie. Thanks again, Felipe, and thanks to everybody else.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.